They left 3 babies in an icy creek, but a broken cowboy jumped to save them before they sank. Wyoming Territory, winter of 1874. The wind howled low through the narrow gulch, sweeping snow into the dead branches of cottonwood. A thin creek slithered beneath a cracked sheet of ice, its banks lined with pale frost and silence. It was the kind of cold that split lips and stole breath, where even the animals had burrowed deep. Colt Dawson rode alone. The fence line he crossed had long since rotted, half swallowed by snowdrifts, tangled in wind-torn barbed wire. His coat, heavy with dirt and silence, flapped against his legs. His horse, gray with age and chill, moved slow through the brush. His eyes, hollowed by grief and years without direction, scanned the barren world without really seeing it. Until he did. Something, a slumped shape along the frozen creek bank, caught his eye. At first, it looked like a bundle of laundry, but it was too carefully tied, too close to the water's edge, too still. He pulled the reins. The horse snorted, uneasy. Colt dismounted, boots crunching through the crusted snow. The wind sliced across his cheeks as he stepped closer. The bag, a coarse brown sack, was soaked halfway through, its bottom stiff with ice. A dark shape pressed against the canvas from within. Then came the sound. A whimper, no louder than a breath, no stronger than a memory. Colt's heart stopped. He dropped to his knees, yanked off his gloves, and tore at the frozen twine. His hands shook, not from the cold, but from something rising up in his chest, hot and ancient. He ripped the bag open. 3 babies. Newborn, their skin blue around the edges, lips colorless. 2 of them trembled, barely. 1 lay still, mouth parted, silent. "Oh God!" Colt's voice cracked. No one answered. He reached in and pulled the children out, one by one, setting them on his coat. Tiny limbs, too thin, already stiffening. Their eyes were shut, lashes rimmed with frost. The wind whipped harder now, as if time itself were pushing him to move. The creek cracked behind him, ice groaning under the shift. No time. He stripped off his coat, wrapped it around all 3. Then, without thought, he stepped into the water. The ice snapped beneath him like glass. He plunged waist-deep into the freezing creek, boots anchoring in the silt. Water soaked through his clothes, climbing up his spine like fire in reverse. He gasped as the cold dug teeth into his ribs. He reached the last baby, the one that had floated against the bank, almost gone. Colt scooped the child into the coat bundle, teeth chattering uncontrollably now. Then he turned back toward the horse. His limbs didn't want to move. His breath came in short, ragged bursts. Pain laced every inch of exposed skin. But he moved. He stumbled to the bank, dragged himself out. Snow clung to his pants in slabs. His boots felt like iron. With shaking hands, he climbed into the saddle, cradling the bundle beneath his coat. The babies didn't make a sound. One gave the faintest whimper. Another trembled. Colt looked down at their tiny faces. "Not today," he said through clenched teeth. "You don't die today." He dug his heels into the horse's sides and turned north. Snow came sideways now, thick and sharp. The trees blurred past in gray streaks. Colt leaned over the bundle, shielding it from the wind, whispering low, senseless words, like prayer or madness. "Stay with me. Come on now, you fight." His lips were cracked. His breath fogged before his eyes, then disappeared into the storm. 1 baby cried out, weak, barely a whisper, but it was sound. Colt rode harder. The outline of a building emerged from the snow, faint orange light in the dark. A lamp flickered on the porch of a distant roadhouse. Nestled beneath pines, smoke curled from its chimney, thin and pleading. Colt didn't stop to knock. He reached the porch, boots hitting the steps hard. He pushed through the door, coat soaked, children in his arms. The room inside went still. A fire snapped in the hearth. 1 baby whimpered again. Colt fell to his knees. "I need heat," he rasped. "They ain't dead yet." And neither, perhaps, was he. The roadhouse near Cotton Hollow had seen its share of drunks, dying men, and weather-worn travelers, but never anything like this. Colt burst through the door, soaked to the bone, carrying life wrapped in wet wool. Snow clung to his lashes. Steam rose from his coat as warmth hit him like a wall. "I need help," he said, voice raw. "They're still breathing." A man behind the bar dropped his glass. A woman gasped. A wiry doctor, summoned from the back, rushed in, wiping his hands on a stained apron. Colt laid the bundle on a table near the fire. The doctor peeled back the layers. 3 newborns, skin pale, lips bluish, breath shallow. "Merciful God," the doctor whispered. "These were in the water?" Colt nodded. "They shouldn't be alive, but they are." Hot bricks were brought from the hearth, blankets warmed, a kettle whistled. The room buzzed with quiet urgency. The babies were dried, wrapped, and fed droplets of sugar water. A young woman, maybe the innkeeper's daughter, held one skin to skin, like a heartbeat. She whispered, "It helps." By morning, color returned faintly to their faces. One girl stirred. The boy sneezed, a weak defiance. The third remained still but breathing. "They'll need care," the doctor said. "Even then, might not all make it." "Who would throw out babies?" someone muttered. 3 of 'em. What kind of devil? Colt didn't answer. He hadn't slept. His clothes still dripped. He watched them, those 3 fragile lives, like a man witnessing a miracle he didn't deserve. The room quieted. Coffee brewed. Someone offered a cot. "You should take 'em to Fort Redwell," said the barkeep. "Orphanage, proper care." "Let 'em blend in," added another. No questions asked. Colt stared into the fire. "They're not cattle. I won't let them vanish. You're a cowboy, not a nursemaid." Colt's jaw flexed. "I'll find who they belong to," he said. "Until then, they stay with me." No one argued. Something in his voice said not to. That afternoon, Colt split wood, built a fire in the side room the innkeeper gave him. He boiled water, cleaned the babies himself, gently, wrapped them in flannel, made a cradle from a drawer, slept in a chair, boots on, ears tuned for the slightest cry. When medicine was needed, he saddled up, carried the smallest girl beneath his coat, rode through frozen brush to the doctor's cabin and back. In quiet hours, he whispered to them, "You're safe now. I won't let you freeze again." One evening, by the firelight, the middle child opened her eyes, pale blue, cloudy, but aware. She looked at him, tiny, vulnerable, trusting. Colt felt something shift. He didn't cry, but something inside him cracked, slow and sharp. He touched her cheek. "You made it," he said softly. He hadn't spoken like that in years. That night, as he watched them sleep, 3 small chests rising and falling, he made a promise. "I won't leave. Not like before. Not like his wife. Not like the child he buried. Not like everything he'd turned from." This time, he stayed. When the doctor returned, Colt asked how to feed them, keep them warm, what to do if fever came. He wrote it down, memorized every word. When it came time to speak of names, he didn't hesitate. He looked at the sleeping boy first. "Jack," he said. Then the smaller girl, Lily, and the one with cloudy blue eyes, Rose. "They ain't mine by blood," Colt said to the fire, "but they're mine now by everything else." In the quiet room, where 3 broken lives had found breath again, Colt Dawson became something he never thought he'd be again. A man with something to lose. By sunrise the next day, the story had spread like fire on dry grass. A cowboy had pulled 3 newborns from the ice. In a town where nothing escaped a whisper, Colt Dawson had become a name on every lip. Some spoke it with awe, others with suspicion. "They say he went in that creek, bare-handed," murmured a stable hand. "They say the babies didn't even cry," replied a shop girl. "Could be they weren't meant to live," said another, quieter. In the bakery, the mercantile, and even the church pews, theories bloomed. Where had the children come from? Who would leave 3 babies to die? And more pressing, what kind of man would take them in? Some called Colt a hero. Others weren't so kind. A man travels alone, no wife, no home, And suddenly he's father to 3, muttered Samuel Blythe, the banker. Mark my words, said Evelyn York, a widow with 2 daughters of marriageable age, this town'll be nursing his sins for years. By week's end, concern turned to opposition, led by none other than Martha Caldwell. She stood outside the general store, wrapped in her black mourning cloak, her silver hair pinned high, eyes sharp as frost. Behind her stood a half-dozen others, businessmen, landowners, wives of county officials, people who prided themselves on keeping the town clean, orderly, God-fearing. We cannot, Martha declared, voice loud enough to carry across the square, permit chaos to fester in our midst. 3 infants with no name, no history, no promise, kept alive by a man with no means and no family. She faced the growing crowd. I do not question his intention, but winter is hard, food is scarce, disease waits in every shadow. We already bury too many come thaw. Someone murmured agreement. We don't need more mouths to feed, she finished coldly, especially mouths abandoned by whatever wickedness brought them here. That afternoon, Colt stood before them. His coat was patched, his eyes were tired, a sling held his left arm from the blow he'd taken during the storm, but his voice, though rough, did not break. I didn't ask for this, he said, standing on the inn's front step. I didn't come here looking for charity or praise. I saw a bag in a creek. I heard a cry, and I pulled out 3 people. A hush. They weren't mistakes. They were alive. He looked straight at Martha Caldwell. You don't have to like me, but you'll not call them burdens while they still breathe. No one spoke for a moment. Then a man in the back cleared his throat. They'll die here, he muttered, and when they do, their death's on your hands. Colt didn't flinch. I'll carry that. He stepped down, back into the shadows, leaving the square hushed and split. What followed was colder than the snow. Women crossed the street to avoid him. The grocer refused him milk. The pharmacist claimed his stock was empty when Colt asked for infant tonic. The whispers were constant. 3 mouths he can't feed. Should have let the creek take them. Even children were told not to go near. Colt bore it. He had borne worse. But each time he looked at Lily's weak fingers, or Jack's fitful sleep, or the way Rose whimpered when the fire died too low, he felt the weight growing. He had only so much money, only so much time, only so much warmth. And they were so small. At night, he stared at the ceiling, listening to their breath, shallow and fragile. What if I can't do this? He whispered once. But in the morning, he rose. He chopped wood. He fetched water. He washed cloths in snowmelt and warmed them with fire. He fed what milk he could trade for, and when he couldn't, he tried sugar and water. He did not run. And not all had turned. The innkeeper's daughter left extra blankets. A stable boy offered a bag of oats for the horse. An old preacher stopped by the door and left a single jar of honey without a word. Small kindnesses. Quiet rebellion. The town had not decided yet, but the battle had begun. 3 babies, 1 man, and a question that cut deeper than winter. Do they deserve to live, just because they were saved? It was near sundown when the woman arrived. Snow clung to the hem of her skirt, her boots soaked dark from the slush. Her face was pale, eyes wide with something between terror and resolve. She stood in the doorway of the roadhouse, drawing every gaze like a ghost from the past. I heard, her voice cracked. There are babies found in the creek. Colt stood from the hearth, slowly. Behind him, the cradle drawer sat on the floor, and inside it, Lily stirred softly in sleep. Rose and Jack lay swaddled, small hands twitching in dreams. The woman's eyes dropped to them. She swayed, and then collapsed to her knees. I need to see them, she whispered. Please, they're mine. Gasps rippled through the room. 3? Someone scoffed. She must be mad. Ain't no woman birth 3 and live to walk through snow, muttered another. She's lying, after sympathy, or silver. Colt stepped forward, tension sharp in his shoulders. What's your name? Eliza, she said. Eliza Moore. He looked her over, her coat threadbare, face sunken from cold and hunger. But it was the way she looked at the children that made him pause, not with claim, not with pride, with grief. She reached out toward the cradle. "Please. I need to hold them." He hesitated. Then, slowly, carefully, lifted Jack into his arms and stepped toward her. "You try anything strange," he said quietly, "I won't be kind." She nodded, tears already falling. The moment Jack touched her arms, something cracked open. She rocked him gently, murmuring words so soft only Jack could hear. "I held him first," she said. "He was the last to come out, but I held him first because he cried loudest." Lily barely made a sound. Rose had her cord wrapped twice. They thought she'd gone, but she came back. Colt stared. No one else could have known that. Eliza looked up, broken. "I didn't leave them by choice." He said nothing, letting the room listen. "I was working a farm out near the East Ridge, hired help. The landowner, he was powerful, respected, and when he found out I was carrying triplet," gasps again, whispers like knives. "He said it would ruin him, said folks would ask questions. I begged to keep them. I said I'd raise them quiet, far away. But the night they came, they took them from me, told me they were dead, told me to never show my face again." She gripped Jack tighter, but gently, as tears spilled. "I tried to die that winter. I almost did. But something kept burning. Maybe it was God, maybe just madness. But when I heard the story in town, about a man who pulled 3 babies from the ice, I knew." She looked at Colt directly, voice trembling. "Please, let them come home." The silence that followed was cold and cutting. Martha Caldwell stepped forward from the crowd. "How convenient," she said, voice like poison. "You show up now? With stories and tears? They're mine. Prove it. I can tell you every mark, every freckle. Jack's birthmark behind his ear. Lily's twisted toe. Rose hums when she sleeps. Please. Or maybe you came for coin, hoping to sell 'em. Or worse." A few nodded behind her. "She's a liar. She's unstable. She's dangerous." Colt said nothing. He stood, watching Eliza hold Jack, the fire casting gold across her face. Lily and Rose stirred in their blankets, and somehow, perhaps instinct, their tiny hands found each other's. 3 lives, still too fragile for the weight of the world, clung together. That night, while the town argued and the wind screamed beyond the shutters, something darker stirred. A man crept to the inn's rear, dressed in black, knife in his coat. He had been paid, not to kill, just to warn, just to make sure Eliza forgot what she knew, what she could prove. But Colt had heard the creak of the floorboard. He stepped out of the shadow, shotgun raised. "You take one more step," he said, "and it'll be your last." The man froze. "You touch her," Colt growled. "You touch none of them." The man backed off, ran. By morning, word had spread again. This time, that Colt had drawn a weapon for the woman, protected her like kin. Some said it proved the madness. Others saw it as a sign of something else. Eliza stayed in the inn, too tired to run again. The children, sensing the tension, barely slept. And Colt, weary, wounded, and bound by something deeper than duty, sat by the fire and knew. Pulling them from the ice was only the beginning. The storm ahead would be colder, crueler, and far more dangerous. But he would not step away. The fire crackled low in the hearth, casting shadows on the walls. Outside, the town was quiet, but it was the quiet of something holding its breath. Colt Dawson sat on the floor, eyes fixed on the cradle. Lily and Rose lay tucked beneath one blanket, Jack curled beside them like a coal still warm. He hadn't slept. His thoughts spun too loud to rest. If he gave them to Eliza, would they be safe? Could she protect them, or would the same hands that tore them away once do it again? He saw it again, the pale bundle under the ice, the barely there cry. If he stepped away now, would that sound be silenced forever? He clenched his fists. Once, he had walked away. from his own wife and daughter, buried by winter and regret. That guilt still followed him like a shadow. He wouldn't watch another family vanish into the cold. Eliza sat by the window, her eyes on the children. "I'm afraid," she whispered, "every second, that someone'll come and say I'm not enough, that I'll lose them again." Colt didn't answer at first, but he'd seen how she held them, how her fingers brushed their hair, like they were made of light. She was still shaking, still fighting, but still reaching. "You won't lose them," he said. "Not while I'm breathing." She turned toward him, startled. "I can't undo what happened," he said, "but if you want to raise them, I'll help you. We'll do it together." Tears filled her eyes. "And if you decide it's too dangerous," he added, voice low, "I'll take them. I'll raise them." She covered her mouth. "They're yours," Colt said, "but they're mine too now." Later, he unfolded a worn map. "There's a farm east, past the ridge. The Bensons. Good people, quiet place." "We can make it?" she asked. "If we leave at dawn." She looked at the children. "Then we go." But dawn came like a fist. As Colt saddled his horse, voices echoed in the square. A crowd had formed. Some held rifles, others torches. At the front stood Martha Caldwell. "You're not taking them," she said sharply. "Not until we know the truth." "They're hers," Colt said. "They're filth," Martha spat. A man in a red bandana stepped forward. "3 bastards, no name. Might as well toss 'em back. Finish the job." Colt moved between them and Eliza, who held the cradle tight. "Say that again," he growled. "Wrap 'em tight," the man sneered. "Colt'll do what should have been done." Colt's hand found his rifle. "You want to hurt children?" he said. "You go through me first." The air crackled. No one moved. Not yet. A girl near the edge, one of the baker's daughters, looked at the bundle, then at Colt. She turned away. The crowd didn't cheer, but no one stopped them either. Colt and Eliza moved slowly through the line. Eyes followed them, some full of hate, some pity, a few with hope. Colt didn't look back. He carried Rose. Eliza held Lily and Jack. The horse trailed behind. Snow fell softly, light and sharp. They walked out of town, 3 children, 1 mother, and a cowboy who chose not to walk away again. They had no map for what came next, but they had each other, and that, for now, was enough. The snow was already falling when Colt Dawson led the small party out of town under cover of night. The sky hung low, heavy as ash. Colt rode at the front, reins in one hand, baby Lily tucked inside his coat. Eliza followed on another horse, carrying Jack. Behind them, a wooden wagon rolled slowly, driven by Harris, a quiet farmer who owed Colt a favor. In the back, wrapped in blankets beside heated stones, lay baby Rose. The prairie vanished behind them in a sea of white. Ahead, frozen woods, rivers, mountains, and the unknown. The wind howled, tearing at coats and scarves. Trees loomed like skeletons. The cold deepened until their breath turned brittle and leather froze stiff. No one spoke. Words had no use. Only survival now. That first night, they stopped beside a half-frozen stream. Colt built a fire with trembling hands. Eliza rubbed warmth into small fingers and toes, while Harris melted snow in a blackened kettle. The babies whimpered. The fire snapped. On the second night, Jack began to cough. Colt noticed first. He took the boy to the fire, pressing a warm cloth to his chest. Jack's breath was shallow, his fever rising. Eliza knelt beside him, pale and strained. "I've seen it before," she whispered. "Too cold, too fast. He needs heat. Constant." Colt opened his coat, placed Jack against his bare skin, and wrapped them both. The baby shook, flushed and weak. Colt rocked gently, murmuring low, broken phrases. Not a lullaby, not a prayer. "You stay with me, little man. Not tonight." Eliza watched, eyes shimmering in firelight. Fear, but something else, too. Trust, fragile and silent. By day 3, the trail was gone. Snow consumed the path. Colt walked beside the wagon, guiding its wheels. Eliza rode behind him with both girls swaddled tight. Rose gave a small cough. Lily had stopped crying. That night, they camped under a tarp strung between trees. Colt gathered wood, scraped ice from bark. His hands were cracked, bleeding, but he kept going. "I won't let them freeze," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. But it wasn't just the cold anymore. They heard the riders before they saw them, hooves crunching snow, dogs barking, voices in the dark, trackers. Colt's jaw clenched. "Move." He shoved Lily into his coat, took up his rifle, helped Eliza mount fast. Harris grabbed Rose, climbed up to the wagon bench. Gunshots cracked. Snow erupted. A horse reared and screamed. "Go!" Colt shouted. They fled. Over frozen ground, through clawing branches. The wind tore at them. Colt fired once, high and loud. The sound echoed. The riders slowed. They reached a frozen river. Colt didn't hesitate. He led them straight across. The ice groaned but held. Another shot rang out. A bullet sparked off stone. Eliza screamed but rode on. On the far side, Colt wheeled around and fired again, into the sky, sharp and final. Silence. The riders didn't follow. An hour later, they arrived at a lonely farm nestled in the hills. An old friend of Colt's owned it, a man who said little, but opened his doors without question. Inside the barn, fresh hay and firelight waited. The babies stirred under their blankets, breath slower, steadier. Colt leaned against the wall, arms wrapped tight around Lily. His chest burned with exhaustion, but his grip didn't loosen. Eliza stood nearby, holding Jack and Rose close. Harris fed the fire, silent as always. They had made it, for now. Colt Dawson had never set foot in a courthouse. He was a cowboy, not a man of papers or arguments. But for Lily, Rose, and Jack, he learned. From their hidden farm, Colt, Eliza, Harris, and a traveling nurse named Clara gathered every scrap of evidence. The soaked cloth sack the babies had been found in, marked with a red fraying thread. Clara's medical notes, dangerously low temperature, bruising on their limbs, clear signs of neglect. Harris led them back to the creek, where they found faint boot prints and a smear of blood on a broken branch. Clara submitted receipts for supplies bought that night. Then came the key. A torn letter Eliza had hidden away, unmistakably written by Martha Caldwell. It read, "End this scandal or we will. No one needs to know 3 more mouths exist." They sent the evidence to a neighboring district court, outside Martha's influence. A deputy came to take sworn statements. Colt was calm and plain-spoken. Eliza trembled but stood firm. Harris nodded quietly. Word spread fast. A young county reporter, Sarah Beck, ran the story. Thrown into ice, the babies who survived a town's silence. Letters of support flooded in. Church leaders, teachers, mothers. They demanded justice and protection for the triplets. Soon, the court announced a public hearing. The room was packed. Martha Caldwell arrived, flanked by lawyers. "These people are unstable," she said, motioning toward Colt and Eliza. "Their word is not law." But one by one, townsfolk stood. A former maid from the Caldwell estate testified she overheard Martha say, "Those babies are a stain, better drowned than raised." An elderly midwife admitted being paid to keep silent. Even the local grocer stepped forward. He'd denied Eliza supplies, on Martha's orders. Eliza's eyes filled with tears. Colt stayed still, jaw tight. The judge, Preston Hale, gray-haired, sharp-eyed, listened carefully. When Martha's lawyer dismissed it all as rumor, Judge Hale held up the letter. "Is this not your handwriting, Mrs. Caldwell?" Martha didn't answer. That night, fear came knocking. A rock shattered the safehouse window. Colt rushed outside with his rifle. Harris and Clara moved the babies to the cellar. A warning shot into the trees sent the cowards running. The message was clear. The danger wasn't over. But something changed. By sunrise, neighbors showed up with lanterns and pitchforks. They said nothing, just nodded, posted up around the house, and stood watch till morning. Colt stood on the porch, Lily in his arms. She didn't cry, just stared up at him, quiet and trusting, as if she'd always known he'd keep her safe. The next day, Judge Hale delivered his ruling. There is clear evidence these children were abandoned with intent. Their lives were nearly erased. This court cannot allow such crimes to go unpunished. He turned to Colt and Eliza. Mr. Dawson, Miss Moore, you risked everything to protect them. If Miss Moore is willing and able, joint custody is granted. If not, full guardianship shall go to Mr. Dawson, with full legal recognition. Gasps rippled. Martha Caldwell stood, outraged. Her lawyers objected, but the gavel struck. Justice was served. Outside, the crowd waited. Some clapped, some cried. A few still turned their backs. But most watched Colt not as a ghost from the hills, but as a man who'd stepped into icy water and refused to look away. Back at the farm, firelight flickered on the walls. Jack lay asleep on Colt's chest. Eliza rocked Lily and Rose by the hearth. You did it, Eliza whispered. We did, Colt said softly, his voice frayed from days of battle. In that moment, in that fragile warmth, surrounded by breath and light, 3 lives, once abandoned, were finally safe. For the first time in years, Colt Dawson believed in tomorrow. Spring came late to the valley that year. The snow lingered on fence posts and in shadowed corners, reluctant to leave. But when it finally melted, green returned, bold and insistent. Colt Dawson stood by a half-built fence, hammer in hand. Behind him, a once-abandoned farmhouse now wore fresh paint and the scent of wood smoke. Laughter echoed from the field. Lily, Rose, and Jack, now walking, giggling, ran through tall grass, chasing butterflies. Their cheeks were pink, their eyes bright. Where once there was frostbite and silence, now lived warmth and sound. Beside the house, Eliza knelt in the garden, coaxing shoots from the earth. Her hands were dirty, her dress simple, her smile full. Now and then, she looked at the children, just to make sure they were still there, still safe. Their home wasn't far from the creek where everything had begun. A few good folk, Clara the nurse, Harris the farmer, old Mr. Dalton, had helped build it. They raised walls, dug wells, planted rows, brought blankets, nails, eggs, and stories. Some had once turned away. Now they returned with quiet apologies and full arms. Inside the house was modest. One room for the children, their names carved above each bed, a wood stove, hand-stitched curtains, a rocking chair that creaked through long nights. Colt had learned to make oatmeal without burning it. Eliza had learned to mend gates. And both had learned how to laugh again. One warm afternoon, with sunlight spilling across the valley, neighbors gathered, a cloth-covered table, jars of wildflowers, and 3 folded baby blankets set the scene. It was time. The naming wasn't grand, just the ones who stayed. Clara, Harris, Dalton, a few neighbors who now waved instead of whispering, and Colt and Eliza standing behind the children, who blinked at the quiet attention. Colt cleared his throat. I never thought I'd be here, he said. I came from silence, from loss. I didn't ask for 3 small lives, but they came, and they gave me more than I knew I needed. He looked at the children. I can't erase what nearly took them, or what was done, but I can promise warmth, love, honesty. They will never doubt they are wanted, because they are. He touched Lily's head. Lily, the first, the fighter. Then Rose, light and grace. Then Jack, stubborn, strong heart. Silence followed, soft, sacred. One girl giggled. Jack reached up, grasping Colt's coat. Papa, he whispered. Colt froze. No words came. Eliza steadied him with a hand on his arm. At her feet, Lily tugged at her dress. Mama, she said. Tears filled Eliza's eyes. She knelt, pulling them close. No cheers, no clapping, just breath held, something gentle settling in the stillness. As the sun dipped low, the children ran again, 3 shadows skipping through grass. Eliza leaned into Colt, her head on his shoulder. "We don't know what's coming," she said. "No," Colt replied, "but we're not running anymore." Storms would come again, so would hardship. The land was never easy, but Colt Dawson no longer walked alone. He had a home, a partner, a promise. Eliza had her name back, her children, her strength, and Lily, Rose, and Jack, born into ice, nearly lost, now had a future of voices that would never forget them. Not every wound heals clean, not every storm leaves without scars, but some stories, even those born in winter, find their way to spring. If this story of redemption, grit, and unexpected family moved your heart, don't let it end here. Hit that hype button to show your love for They Left 3 Babies in an Icy Creek, but a broken cowboy jumped to save them before they sank. And if you want more tales of fierce love and second chances under the wide western sky, subscribe to Wild West Love Stories channel. There's more coming, more dust, more storms, more heartbeats that won't quit. See y'all on the next ride.